interested with this renewed interest in browsers as a gateway to a lot of things. The basic premise or the basic paradigm of a browser hasn't changed in the past 30 years. Since I was in high school,
Right.
the basic idea of browser has not changed. Welcome to Culture and Code, a podcast about the biggest shifts in culture and tech. I'm Rei and Tara, a creative entrepreneur and founding partner of Ironco, a global innovation firm based in New York, Tokyo, and Singapore.
And I'm Tara Tan, managing partner of Strange Ventures, an early stage fund investing in the future of computing.
Cool. So the topic that we decided to talk about today is browsers. And the reason why we thought this could be a timely topic and potentially a good topic of interest for the audience is that in the recent month, there is this renewed enthusiasm, and I would even say a battle or war between different companies by releasing new browsers all of a sudden. I'm old enough to have been around for 2 decades plus in this industry, and I have seen the very first browser war, which started with like Netscape
Yes.
25 years ago. Yeah. And then that moved to things like Safari and Microsoft browser, Explorer, and then more recently, Google Chrome, that has been, I guess, the dominant browser. In the past 6 months, if I understand this correctly, there have been new browsers from companies like OpenAI, which released Atlas a couple of weeks ago. There's a new browser from Perplexity, which is called Comet.
Mm-hmm.
There's a company called the Browser Company that used to make Arc, which I used to be a fairly avid user. It seems like they are phasing that out, and then they brought this new browser called DIA. So in the recent month, there have been this renewed war for the browser space and potentially the battle to control the interface. And I think you wrote a newsletter last week or fairly recently about OpenAI's browser Atlas. So why don't you start off by sharing, what you're observing in that space?
Happy to. And, interesting. So DIA, or the browser company, has now been bought by Atlassian. So they're no longer fully independent.
Yeah.
I believe they will still be building the DIA browser under Atlassian, but that's where it is. I mean, browsers are interesting because they're really the key interface to the future of the AI ecosystem. So, you access AI models right now primarily through chat or a coding agent, also a chat interface. But to access the ecosystem, so an ecosystem of products, the browser is still, it could be one of the main gateways into that sort of ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So what OpenAI did with Atlas was interesting because in the last month, I think in their last dev day, they shared 2 major updates. One is allowing existing businesses like your Shopify, your Etsy, and your so on to be accessed through the chat window in OpenAI, right? So now you can shop for products on Etsy through OpenAI.
On that note, just to interject a bit. So what that means is that you open a browser window, you don't have to type anything. There's the OpenAI, the ChatGPT interface right in the window itself, right? Without typing like...
Yeah, so before we even get into that, I think within your ChatGPT interface today,
right.
Open a little window. It's not even a browser, it's a little context window within ChatGPT itself.
Yeah. And then the other thing that you mentioned is that you're able to, let's say, search for products on Etsy. So you don't even have to go to Etsy to look for products. Exactly. But then within that window, it serves up all this product or that product.
That's right. I think they're trying out a lot of different methods, but one is they're actually bringing the shopping experience within ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And then Atlas, which is their latest browser, brings the chat experience into a more traditional browser.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting about the browser Atlas is that it is AI first. So instead of, right now, if you use Chrome, there's traditional search in an AI mode.
Yeah.
They go straight into AI mode. So you can start, searching for things. You can ask for recommendations. You can ask the agent, ideally, to string together different information. So for example, something like, I'm headed to Bali in 7 weeks. Can you look for the best tickets? and it would trawl through. For me, I tried out a search. Can you find me the best hiking pants? And it did
Yeah.
a search through, I think, thousands of reviews and surfaced the top three. So
Yeah.
this is when you have a reasoning layer on top of a search layer
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
what I think makes a browser AI native or not. So it's similar with, Perplexity's browser, Comet, Dia, OpenAI's Atlas, and a bunch of others are trying to vie into it. But I think,
Yeah.
it really is the gateway to an AI native experience.
Yeah. Just to step back a bit, and in terms of both of our respective browser habits, what do you use? A, the browser, and B, search or some kind of query. How do you find yourself using the tools differently?
For what sense? In what sense?
So I'll share my
Of course.
usage pattern, right? So I come into my office, I open up my laptop or even at home. My go-to browser as of this moment is Chrome, right? So I have these app icons across the side of the screen, and then there are a few icons, or I should say, a few apps that open automatically when I start up my machine, and one of them is the Chrome browser. And long time ago, I used to use Safari, right, and switched to Chrome. I would say last year I was a fan of Arc, which is a browser from the browser company,
Mhm.
and there were certain aspects of that browser that I really liked, but there were certain other aspects that I found kind of cumbersome, and I liked it enough to keep trying it. I think I used it for about 3 months or so. And then, but the little things that I didn't get used to, I think it was just like small things like the organization of tabs and things like that I just didn't get used to. So I gave up and I came back to Chrome. Now I'm in sort of the phase where I'm starting to experiment, particularly with Comet from Perplexity, which has Perplexity's, search and research interface as the default. Yeah. I haven't heavily invested my time into Atlas from OpenAI just yet. And part of the reason why I thought this would be an interesting conversation for us to have and potentially for the audience is like how people's behavior might change down the line based on, say, what we might be observing. So I'll stop there. So my current choice is Chrome, but I'm starting to expand. I'm starting to flow with other browsers, starting with Comet from Perplexity.
Got it. Got it. I mean, I would say that there's a couple of things. Obviously, we talked about it being the gateway to the AI ecosystem. The second thing is, I think what OpenAI is doing and the way they announce their several sort of product launches or directions makes me think that, what's interesting is that they're actually building a personal model
Mm,
or memory bank on you.
mm,
So every
mm.
time you browse your preferences and all of that, the ChatGPT, the OpenAI browser Atlas, stores memories on you.
Right, right.
So like your habits, your preferences, and all of that. And that would spread out across your ecosystem. So your
Yeah,
model should get smarter on you.
yeah,
It's a little bit scary from a security perspective. And some people are like a little bit like, oh, what? This is a lot of power for a company to have.
yeah.
But really, I think that's the end goal, to have a personal model on each user.
Yeah. What in terms of observing my own behavior, a few months ago, I noticed myself using Google search or just even the search bar within Chrome less and less because I thought what I would get either from ChatGPT, depending on the type of inquiry that I wanted to make, I would go to either ChatGPT or Perplexity. If I'm just researching, I find myself going to Perplexity more. If I needed to write something and I need to get like feedback and so forth, I go to ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT less on search and research. I use Perplexity more, and in terms of generating, I use ChatGPT more. But I'm also finding, as of the past couple of months or so, because Google started to incorporate AI results at the top of the search result, that I find that summary for a lot of the searches adequate enough that if I'm searching for something really generic and I don't need to deep dive into it, what Google Chrome gives in terms of the search results and an AI summary to be good enough for probably the majority of generic searches that I do. So what I'm getting at is that I was going away from Chrome and the Google search in general, and then now I'm coming back to it a bit more than I expected.
I mean, Google's AI mode does whatever these chat browsers do.
Yeah, they do.
So the only, I guess, challenge that Google has to, and they have dominance, right? Chrome is, I don't know, what, 60, 70%
Yeah,
of
yeah,
browsers. So like they
yeah,
have dominance. This is billions of people using this browser.
yeah,
Right now, they just have to thread a fine line or try to find line because, a lot of their income comes from search ads.
yeah, yeah,
And AI mode kind of moves away from that, or it's a different model. But if you go into AI mode, I find that it's a much more natural
yeah.
experience. So for me,
You
instead
mean
of
the
trying
AI mode within
Chrome,
Google search,
yes.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
Chrome.
without
Chrome.
Chrome.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. So like I find it just a much more natural experience if you're talking about, sort of human computer interfaces.
Yeah,
A much more natural experience because I don't have to like try to match search engine keywords. I can then
yeah,
start asking. I use it a
yeah.
lot for cooking, for example. And like, okay, if I only have, or if I want to cut this ratio by half, can I use this? Oh, and can I sub this with that? Instead of
Okay.
trying to find the exact words, I ask it in AI mode, and it's just so much easier. So it does a lot of
Yeah.
the calculations for me in the,
Sure. Sure.
instead of within the chat itself versus me having to look for something that someone else has written about before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do think that the reasoning layer on top of search is a superpower.
Yeah.
It makes a ton of sense that that's the evolution of search and
Yeah.
browser itself.
Yeah. Yeah. What about Atlas from OpenAI? Do you find yourself using it more now, or I mean, it's been only a few weeks, so it may be too soon. But
Honestly, my honest take is that I think it's not bad. I think it does a lot of what an AI native browser should do.
okay.
The agent mode is not good enough for it to be a moment where I leapfrog forever and never turn back.
What does the agent mode do?
So agent mode is the promise that the browser is able to act on your behalf. So for
Yeah. Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
you can say, I want to go to a great reviewed restaurant on Friday night for two at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Book me a table.
Yeah.
In essence, it should be able to go all the way through where it
Sure.
looks for
Sure.
great reviews and books it. Right now, it's still like it almost gets you to it. I think it brings up a resi page or something where you can make a
Mm,
reservation, but you still have
mm,
to do it yourself.
mm.
So for me, that's less interesting. That's almost like halfway there, but it's not a full enough experience where I'm like, this is exponentially better than Chrome. If I were to be
Mm.
very honest, I think it's interesting promise.
Yeah.
I can't do stuff like I was trying to test it. So for me, it would be interesting to be like, can I set up a price alert? Let me
Mm,
know when flight prices drop below $700.
yeah.
I can't do that kind of alerts right now. So it's quite
Mm,
linear. The agent mode is still quite linear. So you can get it to do little things, but not really it to be, fully a automated assistant. So
yeah.
if that is the case, it's not enough of an exponential leap for me. Because if
Have you been?
agent mode, yeah, if agent
Yeah.
mode works, then I think that that's
Yeah.
a leap.
Do you have any tasks that you have been able to use an agent to automate something that you had to do manually that you now rely on an agent to do it on a regular automated basis?
Yeah, so I use some of these orchestrator tools to do like news alerts, for example.
Sure, sure.
So I do that,
So that's something that you were doing manually.
yeah. So,
Yeah,
like just
yeah,
like looking at Feedly or whatever and getting all the information, like I do, I can do manual fetch, sort of automated fetching of information.
yeah.
I created a tool or a quick prototype where I would do like a meeting brief. So like
Mm, mm.
before I meet anybody, it would kind of give me a search.
Right, 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 right.
That's a fun little prototype I was building. So I would
Oh,
say
cool,
like
cool.
it's there. So I think there are things like that. I was actually halfway building a presentation making tool. Was not bad, which is quite interesting as well for
Mm,
me, the
mm.
experience itself. So turning a doc into a presentation or a pitch
Yeah,
deck.
yeah, yeah,
So stuff like that, I think it is there, which I think is cool. But yeah, I would say not through agent mode itself. So I tested out OpenAI's agent mode, all of them. I feel like
yeah.
they're like halfway. You still need a lot of these workflow tools at this present moment
Right, right,
to
right,
make
right.
it useful. Yeah,
So it's not good enough to replace
not
your
yet.
current way of working or tools that you use to completely switch to.
Yeah, it's not fully generalized. So like I built these workflows through a workflow tool.
Mm-hmm.
like not a Zapier, like a Lindy or a Zapier or a
Yeah.
Manus, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But for it to be a generalized agent mode kind of tool where you can ask it anything, you don't have to hook up anything,
Mm.
it goes from start to finish. I don't think the tools are there yet. I think the
Yeah.
promise is there, and I think it will get there probably within 12 to 18 months, but right now it's
Yeah.
not there yet.
Yeah. This might be jumping the conversation a bit too far into the future, but back in the previous century, Microsoft managed to dominate, at least in the context of business, the tools that people are using to get things done. And I think Google has been effective starting with the search. And that was the initial entry point into the consumer market. And from there, they've been able to create other productivity tools like the calendar, like Google Doc, Google Slides, and other numerous tools to create an ecosystem. So, like for instance, for work and then for my personal, like I use Gmail, I use Google Calendar, I use Google Doc and Google Slides, not so much just because I don't like the quality of the output I can generate from Google Slides. But like I use multiple Google tools. To Google Contacts is another tool that I use to manage my contacts and so forth. Apple, I think personally, I rely more on the hardware and less on the software ecosystem integration because they just haven't been up to par in terms of either the capacity and the quality of the things that they provide. Google Drive is another thing that I use for both work and more on the personal side. For work, I tend to mix different tools, but for personal productivity ecosystem, Google has been fairly effective in dominating, at least from my personal perspective, dominating multiple tools to own a good portion of my life. Do you see, say, OpenAI or other companies able to get to that level of dominance in terms of creating an ecosystem? Because in order for a company to create an ecosystem, it's more than just one tool, right? Like to be able to provide multiple tools and then control an aspect of the user behavior so that they get something out of it.
I mean, they all started from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And although OpenAI is, there's a daunting sort of hill in front of them, they have about 800 million users
Yeah.
in the last 2 years.
Which is impressive
So
by itself.
it's very, very impressive. So, I would say, even though, say, Google has billions of users, at least on the consumer side, OpenAI has built a really great brand, a
Yeah.
consumer brand, especially.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say they're
Yeah.
much more of a consumer play than enterprise, OpenAI.
I think I know where you're coming from, but what makes you say that?
I mean, I think everything. So their revenues are showing that actually their consumer adoption eclipses their enterprise adoption
Yeah.
by far,
Yeah.
by far.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say that they have much more of they've done a lot more sort of work around consumer growth marketing, whether it's Sora or their social app or anything like
Yeah.
that. Even the ChatGPT has done a
Yeah.
lot in consumer adoption.
Yeah.
So I think that their angle is much more consumer, whereas Anthropic, I feel like is much more enterprise,
Mm-hmm.
professional facing. And then Gemini or Google can do both. I think
Yeah.
right now with Nano Banana, which is their new image generating tool, they were
Yeah.
much more
Yeah.
consumer, but obviously they have a lot of distribution through Google Workspace with them.
Existing networks that they have. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like three to 4 billion users. So
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to the browser conversation, have you tried any other recent browsers that you've been impressed by
There
or
are a
not
couple of
really?
there are a couple of newer ones. I think Arc. I like the experience a lot. I think it's a shame that they're sunsetting it.
Yeah.
I thought Arc was great. I've seen some like newer projects. There's a startup called Dita that I spoke with, and it's quite
Mm.
interesting. They have like kind of a new experience around working with docs and tools. I
Mm.
think it's an open design space, really, and
Mm.
I don't think it's fully cracked.
Mm.
What
Mm.
will be certain though, I think if anything takes off, the bigger companies will immediately try to acquire or dupe it. So
Mm.
that's
Mm.
my sense. But I do think this is an experience problem and not a tech problem, really.
From the expense of the browsers, you mean?
Yeah, the search, sort of experience. And obviously that just isn't just interface, it goes down to infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
Like Google's simplicity of search was because of the backend they built.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that was the experience that sort of came through. and made it, very, very magical, and gave them their first sort of exponential leap
Yeah,
into
yeah.
search. So I would say, I think that the experience itself is still not amazing yet. I feel like there's still opportunity to play.
Yeah. Personally, I'm a fan of Perplexity and what they're doing. It's slightly different from OpenAI and other companies. And I don't know if you played around with Comet, which is their browser.
I have.
You have, yeah. I was actually really mesmerized by the onboarding screens and then like that
Yes,
experience.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, they made it very space age, so to
Yeah.
speak. And they played up the Comet metaphor. So
Hmm,
it
hmm.
was like entering as if you are, it was as if you are entering a new universe.
Yes,
And
yes, yes.
that kind of impression for me, and I'm probably more biased towards that sort of thing than perhaps other regular users, but you could tell that they put a lot of emphasis and effort into making that onboarding experience as moody and as
Cinematic as possible. Yeah.
yeah, very imaginative. And I hadn't seen such an elaborate but tastefully done onboarding experience of an app in the
Yeah.
recent
But my
past.
question is, did you then turn it into a daily habit?
Not yet, not yet. Like I find myself like just out of habit, I open Chrome by default, partially because, like I mentioned, I have it as a default app on my browser on my laptop, and like I have to remember to, I have to open Perplexity or Comet to start the day, so to speak. But I think I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Like if I find enough benefits, I have not gotten there with Atlas, with OpenAI, and also like I think I have a mental barrier of letting one company own everything, even though I feel like a lot of my life is tied up with Google and a lot of the data I'm giving to Google. Yeah. So for the time being, I'm still using Chrome as my main entry point to the web, with sort of dabbling my toes in using Perplexity's tool to see if it brings any new benefit or new value to my productivity. And if it does, then it sort of justifies to switch to Perplexity. But purely from like a search and research perspective, I think where OpenAI has an edge is that it's not only helping you search things, but it's helping you generate things. So that
Mhm.
I think has the edge. Yeah.
Yeah. So conclusion is
Yeah.
that it's still not sticky enough experience
Not
wise,
yeah,
right?
it's still not sticky enough, but like
Yeah.
I don't consider myself an early adopter by any means. I think you're much more of an early adopter than I am. But I still like to experiment with this, just new tools to see how they could improve my work and life. And so
Mhm.
far, Perplexity has shown signs of that. OpenAI in other ways, but not so much that it replaces my browser just yet.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
for, the businesses and retailers that Ian co-works with, like
Yeah.
everyone's waiting to see the platform shift, right? Because that determines a lot of the back end and front end experiences that these
Yeah.
businesses have, especially if they have a large online presence. I think it shifts it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to conclude, what's your
Yeah.
what's your takeaway?
My takeaway is AI native browsers hold a lot of promise. Still not sticky enough,
Hmm.
but everyone is waiting to see where the platform shift happens because that has huge repercussions on how they structure the, sort of digital back end and front end for their businesses. I think it has
Yeah.
pretty big repercussions. So,
Yeah. What I'm interested with this new renewed interest in browsers as a gateway to a lot of things, the basic premise or the basic paradigm of a browser hasn't changed in the past 30 years. Since I was in high school,
right.
the basic idea of browser has not changed. And what I'm kind of curious about is I think OpenAI and ChatGPT was an inflection point in introducing a new paradigm in terms of interacting with a machine or interacting with a network. I wonder if browser can create a better paradigm than this browser paradigm that we've we've lived with for the past 30 years. And at this point, I'm not quite seeing it. I think it's still the same paradigm, but you never know and what the future holds. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank
Sounds
you,
good.
Ray.
Awesome.
See you next
All right.
week.
Have a good Halloween week.
Bye.
Bye.